Apparently, some of y'all were hankering for some stories about unexplained encounters in the deep woods. So I put together a little treat, full of stories of terror from folks who went camping a little too deep in them there woods. Welcome back to Unexplained Encounters. I'm your host, Darkness Prevails. And you should subscribe to my other channel, Darkness Plays, where I play horror games with my friends, and you can hear me say naughty words. Link in the description. Enjoy these terrifying outdoorsy tales, and be sure to send me your scary paranormal and supernatural stories at darkstories.org. And check out my book, Phantom Phenomena, on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, where you can read a hand-picked collection of the scariest stories I've ever received, with cool factoids and atmospheric illustrations. And finally, you should be listening to Unexplained Encounters on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast platform. Just search for EerieCast. Leave us a rating and review when you get there. Thank you. Now, let's begin. Never go camping in the forests on reservations. From Torrential Downpour. Back when I was 13, my family lived in the city, but every summer I visited my relatives on the reservation. It was a tradition that's been going on since I was little. On this occasion, I was especially excited because I would get to spend more time with my cousins, Daniel, who was 14, Mia, who was my age, and little Jonah, who was 11. Their home was nestled deep within the woods, surrounded by towering pines and the sounds of nature. It's a world away from the city life I was used to. The air was fresh, the nights were quiet, and there was a sense of peace that's hard to find anywhere else. One evening after dinner, the four of us were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset. The adults were back inside, chatting and laughing about whatever. Daniel turned to us with a mischievous grin. "Guys, what if we went camping tonight?" Mia raised an eyebrow. "You know Grandma and Grandpa wouldn't let us do that. They've told us 1,000,000 times by now, don't go into the woods after dark." "Exactly," Daniel smirked. "That's why we won't tell them a thing." I could tell Jonah didn't like the sound of that. "I don't know. What if we get caught?" I was torn. The idea of a nighttime adventure sounded great, but disobeying our family didn't sit right with me. "You know, we could just ask first," I added. Daniel shook his head. "They'll just say no. Come on, it'll be fun. We'll set up a tent, tell stories, and we'll be back before sunrise, before they can even know." Mia glanced at me. "What do you think, Alex?" I was hesitant, but then I thought about how memorable it could be, and at the time the kids my age were all saying YOLO. "All right, I'm in, but we have to be careful." Jonah sighed. "Fine, but if we get in trouble, it's on you, Daniel." We waited until everyone had gone to bed. Around midnight, the house was quiet, except for the soft sounds of our grandparents snoring. We grabbed what we would need and went our way. Sneaking out the back door, we made our way into the woods. The night was clear and the moon cast a nice glow through the branches. The paths we were used to during the day were now a bit creepy, which was exciting to us. After about 20 minutes, we found a small clearing near a creek. It was a spot we'd been to many times before, but now, after dark, it was like a whole new place. We worked together setting up a tent, which to be honest was a bit of a struggle in the dark, but we made it work. Once everything was ready, we sat around a small battery-powered lantern. The soft light was enough to illuminate our faces, and the sounds of the forest added to the atmosphere. We could hear crickets and the occasional owl hooting in the distance. "All right, who's got a good story?" Daniel asked, rubbing his hands together. "I do," Mia exclaimed. "Have you guys heard about the Raven Mocker?" Jonah shuddered. "Oh, I don't like that one." "Too bad," she teased. So, the Raven Mocker, it's this evil spirit that steals the hearts of the sick and dying to add years to its own life. It's said it can appear as a raven or take on human form, but only medicine men can see it. That's creepy, I admitted. Daniel leaned in. Well, how about this one? It's even scarier. Have you ever heard of the Deer Woman? Mia rolled her eyes. Daniel, you know that's just a story to keep kids from wandering off. Whatever. They say she appears as a beautiful woman to lure people into the woods. But once you're deep enough, she reveals her true form. Hooves for feet and the face of a stag. Jonah looked genuinely frightened. Can we talk about something else? I decided to lighten the mood. How about the legend of star people? They're benevolent beings. They say they came from the sky to teach our ancestors wisdom and knowledge. That's not scary, Daniel objected. Exactly, I smiled. Maybe we've already had enough of these spooky stories. But Daniel wasn't done. He glanced around and lowered his voice. You know, Grandpa told me something once. Something he said was true. Mia gave him a wary look. What are you talking about? He paused for effect. He said that when he was our age, he encountered a skinwalker. Instantly, the atmosphere changed. We all knew about skinwalkers, witches who could transform into animals using dark magic for evil purposes. It's a subject the elders rarely discuss, and when they do, it's with a sense of dread. Daniel, I don't think we should talk about that, Mia whispered. Come on, it's just a story. Jonah hugged his knees. Maybe we should listen to Mia. But now I was curious. What did Grandpa say? Daniel took a deep breath. He said that one night, he was out late helping his father gather wood. They got separated somehow at one point, and as he was searching, he saw a coyote standing on two legs, and it was staring at him. At first, Grandpa thought his eyes were playing tricks on him, but then it began to walk towards him, its body twisting and contorting. Stop it, Mia pleaded. But Daniel ignored her, continuing on. He froze, too scared to move. The coyote had the face of a man stretched over its skull. It whispered his name in a voice that was not human. Grandpa ran as fast as he could back home, and when he told his father, they performed a ceremony to protect him. Silence fell over us. Even the forest seemed to have gone more quiet, like it was listening with bated breath to his story. I felt a chill. Why would you tell that story? Mia snapped, clearly upset. It's just a tale, Daniel said, though he looked a bit uneasy himself. Jonah's eyes were wide. Do you think they're real? I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to dismiss it as superstition, but another part remembered the warnings from our elders. I think we should just go to sleep, I finally said. We agreed and crawled into the tent. It was a tight fit, but we didn't mind. Being close felt safer somehow at that moment. I lay there staring up at the tent's fabric. Shadows from the trees outside started to creep me out. It was hard to go to sleep. Every little sound outside startled me. Hours seemed to pass. I glanced at my watch. 3:15 a.m., still dark. I was starting to drift off at last when I heard it. A soft shuffling noise, like someone dragging their feet through the underbrush. I held my breath, straining to listen. There it was again, closer this time. Did you guys hear that? I whispered. Mia turned over and looked at me. Hear what? Shh, Daniel hissed. Listen. The shuffling grew louder. accompanied by a faint wheezing, like labored breathing. Then Jonah sat up, his eyes wide with terror. "What is that?" he mouthed. Daniel reached for his flashlight, hands shaking. He gestured for us to stay quiet. Slowly, he unzipped a small part of the tent flap, just enough to peek outside. We crowded around, each of us trying to see without making any noise. The flashlight beam cut through the dark, bringing light to the trees. At first, we saw nothing, but then there was a movement. Emerging from behind a tree was a figure unlike anything I'd ever seen. It had the body of a coyote, but grotesquely distorted. Limbs stretched too long, patches of fur missing, skin pulled tightly over the bones. But the head was the worst, the most horrifying part. It was like the flesh of a human face had been yanked over a coyote's skull and left there, eyes sunken deep with a faint glow, mouth hanging open in a silent scream. The creature moved in a jerky, unnatural way, circling our camp. Its wheezing breaths echoed in the stillness. It didn't seem aware of us, thankfully, but it was searching for something, head twitching about from side to side. Mia covered her mouth to stop a scream. Jonah gripped my arm so tight, even he hurt me. Daniel slowly lowered the flap and turned off the light. We retreated to the back of the tent, hearts pounding. "What do we do?" I whispered. "Stay quiet," Daniel replied. "Maybe it'll go away." We sat there, huddled closely together, listening as the creature continued to circle us. We waited for the longest time, the wheezing breaths drawing closer and closer, right outside the tent.
"Help me."
A raspy voice whispered from outside. I felt a surge of terror. It was mimicking human speech, but the speech was distorted and unnatural.
"Please, help me."
Jonah began to cry softly. Mia held his hand, her own eyes brimming with tears. "Don't respond," Daniel mouthed. The creature pressed against the tent fabric, so close we could see its shadow looming over us. Its smell was overwhelming, decay mixed with something like sulfur.
"Why won't you help me?"
It whispered, the voice barely more than a breath. I closed my eyes hard, silently praying for it to leave. The wheezing continued for what felt like ages. Then suddenly, the sounds began to fade. The shuffling moved away. The wheezing grew distant, and eventually, the forest returned to its natural symphony of nocturnal creatures. And yet, we didn't move. None of us dared to speak or even breathe too loudly. Dawn was still a couple of hours away, but the thought of stepping outside was terrifying. "Do you think it's gone?" Mia finally whispered. "I don't know," Daniel swallowed. "We should wait until sunrise." We sat there, backs against the wall, fighting exhaustion. Sleep was impossible. Every so often we'd hear a distant sound and tense right back up. But the creature didn't return. As the first light of dawn broke through the trees, we felt a collective relief. The darkness had been our enemy, but daylight brought safety. Or at the very least, the illusion of it. "Let's pack up and go," I suggested. Quickly, we stuffed our sleeping bags into our backpacks, not bothering to fold anything properly. Exiting the tent, we looked around, slowly and cautiously. The clearing looked innocent enough, in the morning light, but the memory of the night's terror lingered. "Should we take the tent down?" Jonah asked. "Leave it," Daniel said. "We can come back for it later." We then made our way back home. The journey back felt way longer than before. When we finally exited the woods and approached the house, we saw our grandparents and parents waiting on the porch for us. Their faces had a mix of anger and worry on them. "Where have you been?" Grandma demanded. Her hands were on her hips. Daniel looked down and replied, We went camping after we explicitly told you not to." Grandpa's voice was stern. Mia stepped forward. "We're sorry. We just thought it would be an adventure." Our parents ushered us inside. Once we were seated around the kitchen table, Grandpa looked at each of us intently. "Did anything happen out there?" he asked. We looked at each other, and finally I spoke up. "Yes, sir. We saw something that we can't really explain." Grandma sighed. "We warned you for a reason." "What did you see?" Grandpa pressed. Sounded like he already knew what we were going to say. Daniel began to describe the creature we saw in detail. The distorted body, human-like face, the wheezing, and the voice. Eventually, Grandpa nodded. "It's as I feared." "Was that a skinwalker?" Jonah asked timidly. Grandpa shot him a look so quick, Jonah winced. "Do not speak of it." "Yes, and I'll say this once. It is what our people call Inadloshi. They are witches who have chosen to embrace darkness, capable of taking the form of animals to harm others." "Why didn't you tell us before?" Mia asked, her voice shaking. "Because speaking of them can draw their attention," Grandma said softly. "We did not want to scare you, but we also hoped you would respect our warnings." Our parents performed a cleansing ceremony that afternoon. Sage smoke filled the house as they chanted prayers for protection. The atmosphere was solemn, but I felt a weight finally lifting off my shoulders. We were grounded for the rest of the stay, which was fine by me. None of us had any desire or plans to venture into those woods again. At least, not for a long time. That night, I found myself staring out the window, scared but also wondering if I would see those eyes again, peering back at me. On my last day, Grandpa sat with me on the porch. "You've learned a hard lesson," he said gently. "I'm sorry we disobeyed," I apologized. He placed a hand on my shoulder. "The spirits of these lands are powerful. Some are good, others are not. So it's important to respect them and the wisdom passed down through generations." "Do you think it'll come back?" He gazed out at the tree line. "I believe the ceremony has offered protection. But remember, curiosity can be dangerous. Always trust the guidance of your elders." As I returned to the city, the experience stayed with me. It's something I still think about often, especially at night when the shadows seem a little deeper. I've become more interested in our traditions and stories, realizing they're not just tales, they're lessons. I haven't told too many people about that night. Most don't believe me when I do. But I wanted to share it here, not to scare you per se, just to remind you to respect the unknown and to listen to the people that came before us. They figured some things out long before we did, so we didn't have to figure things out ourselves. Funny how we naturally don't want to listen. Some things in this world can't easily be explained, and perhaps they shouldn't be. All I know is that I'll never forget those haunting whispers in the dark, and the lessons we learned the hard way. Black-eyed kids in the woods. From Big Red. I've been debating whether or not to share this, but it's been weighing on my mind, and maybe putting it out there will help me process what happened. This isn't some spooky campfire tale. It's something that actually occurred only a few months ago. I'm from Columbus, Ohio. My two best friends are Tyler and Greg. We've been tight since high school. Played football together, went to the same college, the whole deal. Back in April, Greg's dad passed away suddenly. It was a heart attack. Came out of nowhere, no warning, nothing. Greg was devastated. His dad was his rock, and losing him hit Greg harder than anything I'd ever seen. After the funeral, he was in a dark place. Tyler and I tried everything to help him out, but nothing seemed to lift his spirits. One evening, out of the blue, Greg called us up. He suggested we all go on a camping trip like we used to. He said he needed to get out of the city and clear his head. Tyler and I were all for it. Some time in nature might be just what he needed. We decided to head to Wayne National Forest in southeastern Ohio. It's a massive area with dense woods and not too many people. It's a perfect spot to get away to. Tyler had recently bought this small RV camper. It wasn't luxurious, but it had the basics. A couple of bunks, a tiny kitchen area, and best yet, a heater for those chilly nights. We packed up on a Friday afternoon. Sleeping bags, hiking gear, a cooler full of food and drinks. Then we hit the road. The drive was filled with our usual joking around, though Greg was quieter than usual. We didn't push him. We just let him be. When we got to the forest, we decided to find a spot off the main trails. We wanted some seclusion, a place where we could just relax without other campers nearby. After navigating some narrow dirt roads, we found a clearing surrounded by tall pines. It felt right. So we set up camp, started a fire, and spent the evening grilling burgers and reminiscing. The sky was clear and the stars were out in full force. Tyler, who's always been into astronomy, was thrilled. "Look at that sky," he said, lying back on a log. "You don't get views like that in the city." "Yeah, it's pretty amazing," I agreed. Greg seemed to relax a bit, sipping his beer and even cracking a smile now and then. It was good to see him loosen up. Around midnight, Tyler had an idea. "I'm going to sleep on the roof of the camper tonight," he announced. "I don't want to miss any of this." Greg chuckled. "You're nuts, man." "Maybe," Tyler grinned, "but I'll have the best view." I laughed. "Just don't roll off in your sleep." He grabbed his sleeping bag and climbed on up, settling in on the flat roof. Greg and I decided to turn in and headed inside the camper. It was cozy. 2 small bunks and just enough room to stand up. I climbed into my bunk and pulled out my phone, scrolling through social media. Greg was lying across from me, staring at the ceiling. "You doing okay?" I asked. He sighed. "Yeah, just thinking. About your dad?" "Yeah, he would have loved this." I nodded. "He was a good man." "Thanks," Greg said softly. We fell into silence and eventually I started to drift off. Sometime later, I woke up to a soft knocking sound. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but then it came again, a gentle tap at the camper door. Greg, you hear that?" I whispered. He stirred. "Hear what?" "Someone's knocking." We both listened. There it was, a faint, deliberate knock. "Maybe it's Tyler messing with us," Greg suggested. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Tyler. "Are you guys awake?" it read. "Yes," I replied. "Are you knocking on the door?" "Nope, but I see someone outside." My heart skipped a beat. "Who?" Looks like two kids standing near the fire pit. I showed the texts to Greg. He looked as puzzled as I felt. What are kids doing out here at this hour? He asked. No idea, I said. Should we check it out? He nodded. Well, we can't just ignore them. I called out through the door. Hello? Can we help you? A small voice replied. Please, we need to use your phone. Something about the voice felt off to me. It was flat, almost mechanical. Where are your parents? Greg asked. Please let us in. The voice said again. I felt a creeping sensation in my gut. We can call someone for you. Just tell us the number. Silence. Then, we need to come in. Let us in. My phone buzzed again. Tyler had sent another message. Don't let them in. Something isn't right. What's going on? I typed back. Their eyes. They look completely black. I felt a chill run down my spine. I showed the message to Greg. What does that even mean? He whispered. I don't know, but Tyler seems serious. The knocking grew louder. Let us in, the voices demanded. They sounded more forceful than before. Look, we can get you some help, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. No, you need to invite us in, the voice insisted. Why do you need an invitation? Greg asked. Please, we just want to come in, the voice said, almost pleading now. My phone buzzed again. Tyler wrote, They're acting weird. They keep looking up here, but I don't think they can see me. Should we call the police? I texted back. Maybe, but we're pretty far out, he replied. Greg was starting to look uneasy. What do we do? I think we should just keep the door locked, I said firmly. The knocking stopped. For a moment, everything went silent. Then we heard footsteps circling the camper, slow and deliberate. They're walking around, Greg whispered. We stayed quiet, listening to the soft crunching of leaves underfoot. The footsteps stopped near one of the windows. Please let us in, the voice said again, right outside. I peered through the curtain, but couldn't see much. Just a small figure standing close to the window. Why won't you let us in? The voice asked, sounding desperate. I didn't know what to reply. My mind was reeling. Then from above, we heard a soft thump. Tyler texted, Oh my God, they're trying to climb up here. Be careful, I typed back. He responded, One of them said something weird. I swear it sounded like, your friends won't help you. I showed the message to Greg. This is getting creepy. Agreed, he said. Maybe we need to regroup. Good idea. We decided to bring Tyler inside. I mustered up some courage and opened the door just enough to stick my head out. Tyler, I whispered loudly. Get down here. He carefully climbed down the ladder on the side of the camper. As he reached the ground, we heard one of the voices. Now you've made a mistake. We quickly got inside and locked the door behind us. What the heck is going on? Greg asked. I don't know, Tyler said, catching his breath. But those kids, their eyes are pitch black, no whites, no iris, nothing. That's impossible, I said. Well, I saw it, he insisted. We sat there, the three of us, trying to make sense of the situation. Maybe they're wearing contacts, Greg suggested. At this hour, in the middle of nowhere, Tyler replied. Just for some prank? My phone buzzed again. An unknown number. The message read, "You cannot hide from us." I showed it to the others. "Did you guys give your numbers out? Our numbers out?" They shook their heads. "How did they get your number?" Greg asked. "I have no idea." The footsteps started again, this time more rapidly, circling the camper. "This is messed up," Tyler said. "We should call the police, right?" Greg asked. I tried to dial 911, but somehow the call would not connect. It didn't make sense. No signal, I guess. I stared at my phone. "Same here," Tyler said, checking his. "Great," Greg muttered. The voices came again, sounding more irritated this time. "This is your last chance. Let us in." "Ignore them," I whispered. We huddled together, hoping they would just go away. Minutes felt like hours as we sat there in silence. Then, everything went quiet. The footsteps, the voices, they were gone. "Do you think they left?" Greg wondered. "Maybe," Tyler said skeptically. I peered out the window but didn't see anybody. "Let's just wait a bit to be sure," I suggested. We stayed put for another half hour, and when there were no further sounds, we started to relax slightly. "Maybe it was just some kind of prank," Greg said, though he didn't sound convinced. "Who would go to that length?" Tyler asked. "Kids from town? I don't know." "Well, I'm not staying to find out," I said. "Let's pack it up. Get out of here." We quickly gathered our things, trying to make as little noise as possible. As we stepped outside, the forest was eerily still. The fire had died down to glowing embers. We loaded up the camper, and just as we were about to get in, I heard it. "Do you think you're leaving?" One of those voices, calling out from somewhere in the dark. I spun around, but I didn't see anyone. "Who's out here?" I shouted, my voice betraying my nerves. Silence. "Let's go," Tyler urged. We jumped into the camper, and Greg started the engine. As we pulled away, the headlights briefly illuminated two figures standing at the edge of the clearing. They looked like kids, but their faces were obscured by shadows. "Did you see that?" Greg asked, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "Just drive," I said. We didn't stop until we reached a gas station about 30 miles away. It was brightly lit and felt like a sanctuary compared to the darkness we'd just left. Inside, we grabbed coffees and sat down at a booth. "What the heck just happened to us, guys?" Greg asked. His hands were shaking. "No idea," Tyler replied. "But those kids, whatever they actually were not normal." I pulled out my phone and did some searching for anything that might explain it. I then stumbled upon loads of stories about black-eyed children, accounts eerily similar to ours. "Guys, look at this," I said, showing them my phone. We read through several stories together, stories of people encountering children with completely black eyes, children who insisted on being let inside homes or vehicles. "This can't be a real thing," Greg said. "I know what you're feeling, but, we just experienced this," Tyler said. We sat there for a while, processing everything. Eventually, we decided to head back home. Over the next few days, we kept in close contact, sharing any strange occurrences. Fortunately, nothing out of the ordinary happened. Greg started to attend grief counseling and seemed to be coping better. "Sounds crazy," he told me one day, "but maybe facing something unexplainable made me realize I can't control everything." "I'm glad you're doing better," I told him. "Me too, but let's avoid any more camping trips for a while." Agreed, I laughed. Life started to return to normal. I haven't received any more strange texts, and neither have Greg or Tyler. I'm praying this was all a one-time thing, and maybe we'll never fully understand what happened that night. But if you ever find yourself alone somewhere and someone knocks at the door, begging to be let in, be doubly sure about what you do next. Stay safe out there. The Beast is Still Here. From Alice K. Last summer, my friend Lily and I decided to take a little trip to France. We'd both just graduated from college and wanted to do something a bit more adventurous before diving into the whole career thing. We'd saved up some cash from our part-time jobs and planned a 2-week backpacking trip through the French countryside. We started in Paris, of course, soaking in all the touristy stuff. The Eiffel Tower, the Louvre, you know the drill. But both of us were more interested in the less traveled paths, so we headed south to the rural areas, wanting to experience what we called the real France. One place that caught our attention was the region of Gévaudan. Lily had read about it in some historical thriller novel, and was intrigued by the legends of the Beast of Gévaudan, a creature that supposedly terrorized the area in the 18th century. I'm a bit of a history buff myself, so I was all in. We arrived in a small village called Merues, nestled in the mountains. It was picturesque, with cobblestone streets and old stone houses. The locals were friendly enough, but seemed a bit reserved when we mentioned our interest in the beast's legend. One elderly woman even crossed herself and muttered something under her breath when we brought it up. Undeterred, we found a quaint little inn to stay in and planned a hike through the nearby forests the next day. The innkeeper, a middle-aged man I'll call Jacques, warned us to stick to the marked trails. "People can get lost easily," he said in his thick accent, "and the wolves have been more active lately." "Wolves?" Lily asked, her eyes lighting up. "Yes, but they usually avoid humans," he replied. "Just be cautious." The next morning, our backpacks loaded with snacks and all the goods, we set off. The forest was breathtaking, tall trees forming a canopy overhead and the smell of pine in the air. The birds chirping were a nice cherry on top. It was everything we'd hoped for, the very reason we planned this trip in the first place. About 2 hours into the hike, we came across this old, overgrown path, which wasn't on our map. Lily, ever the adventurous type, thought that we should take it. "Come on, Emma," she said, tugging at my arm. "This is exactly the kind of off-the-beaten-path experience we both want." I hesitated. "I don't know. Jacques said to stay on the marked trails." She rolled her eyes playfully. "Are you afraid of the beast from a few hundred years ago? Think it's gonna come back and get us?" I laughed. "Fine, but if we get lost, I'm blaming you." We ventured down the path, which wound deeper into the woods. The trees were denser here, and the light filtering through the leaves gave everything a greenish hue. It was eerie, but beautiful. After about an hour, we stumbled upon a clearing with the ruins of what looked like an old stone cottage. Moss covered the walls, and nature had begun to reclaim the place. Intrigued, we decided to explore. "Imagine who might have lived here," Lily mused, running her hand over the rough stone. As we looked around, I noticed strange markings etched into one of the remaining walls. They did not look like any writing I'd seen, more like symbols or sigils. "Hey, check this out," I called to Lily. She walked over, squinting at the markings. "Weird. Maybe it's some kind of old language." That moment, a strange rustling sound came from the trees behind us. We both froze. Eventually, I whispered, "Maybe just an animal." Maybe we should head back, Lily suggested, her earlier bravado now fading. Yeah, good idea. As we turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of something moving between the trees, a large, dark shape that seemed to be too big to be a deer. Did you see that? I asked, my heart beginning to race. See what? I don't know. I saw something move over there. We stood still together, scanning the forest. The woods had gone unnervingly quiet. No birds, no insects, nothing. Come on, let's go, Lily said, her voice barely above a whisper. We started back the way we came, walking quickly but trying not to panic. Every so often I'd hear the crack of a twig or the rustle of leaves, and I would glance back to see nothing. After what felt like ages, we realized we weren't on the same path that we'd taken earlier. Are we lost? I asked, trying to keep the fear out of my voice. The path should be right here, Lily insisted, looking around frantically. We pulled out the map, but it was useless. We had no idea where we were. And better yet, our phones had no signal, and the GPS wasn't working well under the thick canopy. Okay, let's stay calm, I said. We can retrace our steps. Just then, a low growl came through the trees. This time, we both heard it. I remember Lily joking, asking if that was my stomach, but she sounded terrified. We started to move faster, the growling growing louder and closer. Suddenly, Lily screamed, and I spun around to see this massive animal emerge from the shadows. It looked like a wolf, but far too large, with matted fur and glowing yellow eyes. Its snout was longer than a wolf's too, and saliva dripped from its bared fangs. Run! I shouted. We sprinted through the trees, branches whipping against our faces. I could hear it behind us, crashing through the underbrush. My lungs burned, but adrenaline pushed me forward. Out of nowhere, Lily tripped over a root and went sprawling. I skidded to a halt and rushed back to help her up. Come on, I urged, pulling her to her feet. That thing was closing in on us, snarling. In a blind panic, we veered off to the left, spotting a rocky incline ahead. We scrambled up the rocks, hoping that the creature couldn't follow us. Reaching the top, we found ourselves on another trail, a real one this time, with signs and markers. Relief washed over me. Look, I pointed to a sign indicating the way back to the village. But before we could celebrate, the beast appeared at the bottom of the incline, staring up at us with those malevolent eyes. It let out a howl that echoed through the mountains. Go! Lily yelled. We raced down the trail, the creature now out of sight, but the fear propelling us forward. After running non-stop for what felt like miles, we burst out of the forest and fell onto a road where a small van was parked. An older man was loading crates into the back. He looked up, startled to see two disheveled girls sprinting towards him. Please help us, I gasped. He took one look at us and gestured for us to get into the van. Without hesitation, we jumped in, and he sped off toward the village. What happened? He asked in broken English. Some kind of animal chased us, Lily explained between breaths. He nodded grimly. La bête. The beast. You know about it? I asked. He didn't answer me, but that alone was answer enough. Back in Meroes, we went straight to the inn. Jacques took one look at us and shook his head. You went off the trails, didn't you? He said, not unkindly. We're sorry, I apologized. But we saw something out there, something that shouldn't exist. Jacques sighed. The legend is not just a story. Many here have seen it. Why doesn't anyone do something about it? Lily demanded. He shrugged. What can we do? It's a curse that has plagued this region for centuries. That night we stayed in our room, doors locked and windows shuttered. Neither of us slept much. The next morning, we decided to cut our trip short and head back to Paris. As we were leaving, Jacques handed us a small pendant with an intricate design. What's this? A protective charm for your safety. We thanked him and left, eager to put distance between us and whatever lurked in those woods. Back in Paris, amidst the bustle of the city, the whole experience felt surreal. But the nightmares that followed reminded me that it was, in fact, real. I still have dreams on occasion of those yellow eyes and that haunting growl. Lily and I don't talk about it much. When people do ask about our trip, we stick to the highlights. The Eiffel Tower, the cafes, the art museums. No one would believe our encounter anyway. But I do wonder now, what else is out there in the hidden corners of the world? What other things exist that people simply are too afraid to talk about? And I still can't shake the feeling that we were lucky enough to make it out of Gévaudan alive. Hide behind encounter. From Puck's Wudgie. Growing up on a farm with over 250 acres of land had its perks. Endless space to explore, the freedom to roam, and a sense of solitude that's hard to find anywhere else. At 17 years old, I was no stranger to hard work. My dad ran the place with a firm but fair hand, and I was more than willing to help out wherever I could. One summer evening, Dad mentioned needing trees cleared in the deepest part of our woods. He offered to pay me well for the job, more than he usually would. The extra cash sounded good at that age. At the time, I had my eye on this used dirt bike that a friend of mine was selling. So I jumped at the opportunity. The next morning, I loaded up the truck with all the necessary gear, packing everything up in the sturdy trailer that my dad let me borrow. The area he wanted me to clear was a good drive through rough terrain, parts of the property we didn't frequent often. As I set off, the sun hadn't set yet, but was well on its way, making our fields look golden. The drive took about half an hour, the path getting narrower and more overgrown as I went deeper. When I made it to the spot, I took a moment to appreciate the serenity. There were tall trees all around, and the wind sounded nice. I got to work then, my chainsaw roaring to life. The first few trees came down without a hitch. As I was moving on to the next, I had the odd sensation of being watched. I paused, cutting the engine and listening closely. There was nothing unusual, just the typical forest sounds. So, for the time being, I shrugged it off and continued my work. A couple of hours later, while taking a break, I noticed something strange. One of the trees I'd felled earlier was missing. That couldn't be right or possible. Trees don't get up and walk away. I headed over to where it should have been, scratching my head. There was the stump, cleanly cut, but the tree itself was now gone. I looked around, thinking maybe I'd dragged it off and forgotten about it. But no, it was nowhere in sight. A bit unsettled, I decided to chalk it up to me being forgetful and moved on. As the day wore on, little things started to nag at me. Shadows seemed to shift just beyond my line of sight. Once I thought I heard faint laughter, but I assumed it was the wind, because I should have been alone out here completely. The feeling of being watched grew stronger, but every time I looked around, I was still alone. Well after dark, I sat down for a late dinner. While eating, I felt that prickling sensation again, the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. I scanned the perimeter, but again I saw nothing out of the ordinary. But then a sudden rustling sound caught my attention. About 20 yards away, bushes shook violently, as if something big was moving through them. I stood up in an instant, ready to go. "Hello?" I called out, getting no response. Wildlife was common out here. Deer, foxes, sometimes a bear. But this felt different. Deciding it was best to keep working and finish up, I got back to it. By the time I loaded up the last of the logs onto the trailer, I was deep into the night. The woods were quiet, the daytime creatures settling down as the nocturnal ones began to stir. I checked my watch. 10 p.m. Time had really gotten away from me. I pulled out my cell phone and called home. Mom answered on the second ring. "Hey Mom, just letting you know I'm gonna camp out here for the night. It's a nice evening, and I'd rather not drive back in the dark." "Alright, hon. Be safe, and call us the moment you need anything." "Will do. Good night." After hanging up, I set about making a simple camp. I always kept a small tent and sleeping bag in the truck, for occasions just like this. With the tent pitched near the truck, I started a small fire to cook some dinner. Just canned beans and hot dogs. But that really hit the spot. Sitting by the fire, I pulled out a book my dad had lent me, a non-fiction book about the Civil War. My dad was a bit of a history and folklore buff. After a while, I closed the book, tossing another log on the fire. The night was calm, the fire crackling softly, but the quiet was soon interrupted by a faint sound, like someone stepping on dry leaves. I looked up, peering into the dark beyond the fire's glow. Just some animal, I thought to myself. Still, the feeling of being watched returned, a bit stronger than before. I decided to turn in, thinking after all that hard work it'd be easy to sleep. I doused the fire, leaving just a few embers glowing, then crawled into my tent. Lying there, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was out there. I told myself I was being paranoid, that these strange occurrences throughout the day were just adding up and getting to me. Sometime later, I drifted off, only to be jolted awake by a loud thump. I sat bolt upright. The sound had come from near my truck. Listening closely, I heard what sounded like heavy breathing, but it was irregular. I unzipped the tent just a crack, enough to peer out. The moonlight made everything look extra creepy, with how it cast the shadows. But I didn't see anything weird just yet. The truck and trailer were sitting there, just as they should. But then I saw something, a shadow slipping behind a tree, too big to be any animal I knew. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. Then I saw the shadow move again, darting from that tree to the next, always just out of full view. It was like it knew exactly where my gaze would land and avoided it perfectly. There was something familiar about it now, but I wasn't sure why. I tried to calm myself. Surely it was nothing, just my eyes playing tricks. I gathered my courage and grabbed the flashlight, shining it towards the trees. Everything was silent, until I began to hear the breathing again. It was closer now. I swung the flashlight around frantically. For a split second, I thought I saw a figure, a tall, gaunt shape slipping behind a tree. My hand shook, the light wobbling. I knew deep down that I should not be staying out here. Slowly, I backed into the tent and packed up what little I had inside. Emerging cautiously, I made my way toward the truck, keys in hand. The trailer was loaded down with logs. I climbed into the driver's seat and locked the doors. The engine roared to life, and I felt relieved. I put the truck in gear and tried to pull forward, but the vehicle struggled. The weight of the loaded trailer was too much on the uneven terrain. I was starting to panic. With that trailer attached, maneuvering quickly would be nearly impossible, if I could get this thing moving at all. I needed to unhook it. Gathering every ounce of courage I had, I stepped back outside into the dark. I was terrified. I could feel eyes on me, and my hair was standing on end. I worked quickly, unlatching the trailer, causing metal to clink loudly in the forest. But then there was a sound behind me, a low growl. I was way too scared to even try glancing in that direction. With the trailer unhitched, I jumped back into the truck and floored it. The tires spun for a moment before gaining traction, and I sped down the rough path, branches scraping the sides. In the rearview mirror, I thought I saw movement, a dark shape standing in the middle of the path, but it quickly vanished as I rounded a bend. The drive back was a blur. I didn't slow down until I saw the lights of the farmhouse in the distance. Pulling into the yard, I shut off the engine and just sat there, hands gripping the wheel tightly. I didn't tell my parents the full story, just that I decided to come back early. They noticed the trailer was missing, and I explained I'd left it there, planning to retrieve it the next day. That night, sleep eluded me. I kept thinking about what I'd seen. The next morning, Dad and I drove back to get the trailer. The area looked normal enough in the daylight. The trailer was right there where I left it, still loaded with logs. "Why'd you unhook it out here?" Dad asked. "Had some trouble maneuvering last night," I replied. We hitched it back up without incident. As we were about to leave, I glanced back toward the trees, and I swear for a brief moment, I saw a dark shape slip behind a trunk. But it could have been a trick of the light. Back at home, I went straight to the bookshelf in my dad's study. This whole time there was something familiar about what I'd experienced, but I couldn't put my finger on why. I searched through the volumes, and I found one I remembered reading several years ago. A book on folklore in the forests, specifically in North America. For that entire evening, I read about the monsters there, until I came to one. The Hide Behind. I read it thoroughly. A creature known as the Hide Behind was said to prey on those alone in the woods, especially after dark. It could contort its body to hide behind the narrowest of trees, always staying just out of sight. Victims often reported feelings of dread and the sensation of being watched before disappearing without a trace. A shiver ran through me. I was never one to believe in all this kind of folklore, just thought it was a fun read. But the parallels were too strong to ignore. I decided to share a bit with my dad, in a non-obvious way. I asked him, "Have you ever, heard any stories about strange things in the woods?" He looked at me. Your great-grandpa used to tell tales about creatures out there, some old lumberjack legends. Like the Hide Behind." He raised an eyebrow. "You've been reading that book, huh?" "Yeah, just curious." "Those are just stories, son. But honestly, I've always thought every legend had a kernel of truth. Always good to be cautious out there, especially if you're alone." I nodded, not entirely reassured. From there on out, I believed that there was something out there. So I avoided going deep into the woods alone, and I stuck to the more familiar areas near the farm. One evening, I met up with a friend who lived nearby. I mentioned my experience, and to my surprise, he didn't just laugh me off. "Well, you're not the first to feel that way out there," he said. "I've heard old-timers around here talk about strange happenings. I've heard stories about missing livestock and eerie sounds. Some of them won't even go into the woods after dark anymore." This was both comforting and unsettling to know that I was not alone in this. To this day, I tread carefully on our land. The woods aren't as serene as they used to be. They're a place to be respected and feared. What do you think? Do you think the Hide Behind is real? Have you ever encountered one? Let me know, because I'm very, very curious. Thank you for tuning in to Unexplained Encounters. If you're not already, follow and listen to Unexplained Encounters on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast app. Leave us a rating while you're at it. Get some cool creepy merch at eeriecast.store. Check out my other show where I narrate scary work stories. It's called Tales from the Break Room. For more terrifyingly entertaining shows from EerieCast, go to eeriecast.com. And if you want to listen to Unexplained Encounters and all the other EerieCast shows without pesky ads, sign up for EerieCast Plus at eeriecast.com/plus. You'll also get exclusive access to horror audiobooks only available to EerieCast Plus members. And you'll get 20% off our EerieCast.store merch through our members-only monthly discount code. Finally, if you have a scary story of the unexplained, send it to me at darkstories.org. I think that's about it. Thank you so much for joining us. Stay safe out there and stay creepy, because this world is a strange one.